Hi, I'm your host Dan Roche with Culture Wars, and today I'm joined with Thomas.
Hi, it's great to be here.
And we will be discussing the 2016 election with the protests going on, along with the Dakota Access pipeline. So Thomas, after we've seen the results of the election, were you surprised about Donald Trump winning?
I was surprised, but I understand why it happened, because when you are the incumbent party, which Obama's president right now, you have to offer some sort of change. And Hillary was, for the most part, offering the same thing that we've had for the last 8 years. Trump, however, obviously definitely coming with change, which a lot of people responded to. He had a lot of, he jokes about like Hillary's low energy and stuff, but it is kind of true. Trump's supporters were huge fans of him, obviously. Like, they were super excited about him, whereas Hillary supporters, a lot of them there were definitely some who were really excited about her, but a lot of them were kind of begrudgingly voting for her, because she was the lesser of two evils. So I understand why it happened, but because the mainstream media made it seem like it was going to be an absolute landslide for the past 6 months, which I think hurt her actually much more than it helped her. And I think they did for the most part, I think the media did a horrible job of covering this election. And so for that reason, I was surprised.
Why do you think people wanted change from Obama? I mean, some recent polls about his approval ratings came out at the end of his presidency, and some put him in the mid-50s, which is pretty high for a president leaving office. So why do you think people wanted change and not Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think the reason is approval rating. It actually shot up like around the same time that Donald Trump won the nomination. So I think that that was probably why his approval rating went up. And I think that after 8 years of having the same person in office, Obama was great and good for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, perhaps even maybe a little bit irrationally, they hated him. And even people on the left, a lot of people have been dissatisfied with him. They didn't want, because Obama and his administration, he ran both in 2008 and in 2012 on change and hope. And he has really given us just incremental change, definitely not what he promised and not what a lot of people were expecting. And Hillary, a lot of people on the right said that she was going to continue Obama's legacy as a bad thing, but I think that was maybe to people on the left, liberals, I think that made her seem less desirable to them more than it did for Republicans. And I think a lot of people just saw that she was going to be very moderate. She admits that she's a moderate, much like how Obama has become. And I think she just couldn't excite a lot of people.
Do you think the protests going on about the election are fair for the people, assuming that Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote but lost the election? Do you think they're fair?
I think, yes, they're definitely fair, because a lot of people are very upset that Donald Trump is now their president-elect. Obviously, a lot of people did not want that. And so obviously they're not going to change anything. Donald Trump is going to be the next president. But I think it is important to see that people are passionate about politics right now and are they're being very active with these protests. And like I said, it's not going to change anything, but it does show that it's sending a message that we're not just going to accept everything that Trump does. We're going to fight him for 4 years. Please, God, let it only be 4 years. And about the Electoral College, I think we can have a discussion about this. I think that overall, because usually it doesn't fail, but
sometimes
40% of the elections this century, the winner of the popular vote hasn't become president. And that's just simply not democracy. So what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like personally that I think the Electoral College currently is outdated, but going back to the protests, I don't really understand what they're protesting for, because many of them right now are protesting against the Electoral College, which is fair, and not accepting Donald Trump, which isn't fair, because right now in the 2016 election, the Electoral College was still there. So they shouldn't be protesting against the results because it's done, it's over. That's how American democracy works. And for when you said that that's not how democracy works, and for the Electoral Colleges, the popular people sometimes don't pick the president. I feel that in some democracies that is, but we are not a direct democracy in the United States. We're mainly a republic over it, and an indirect democracy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how our democracy works. Even if it should be changed, I think it should be changed.
Mm-hmm.
But right now it's not changed. So I don't know. Donald Trump recently has been pushing term limits for congressmen. I don't know if he'd push for change in the electoral college, but I don't know. Do you think that in the next 2 years for the midterm election, do you think the Republicans will be able to maintain control of all the branches of government?
I definitely don't. I think that obviously in 2 years Trump will still be president, and the Supreme Court will probably, it'll definitely be leaning right, unless for some reason Trump elects or appoints a Democrat to it. But I think there's a good chance that that Congress will flip to Democratic, and I think that people saying like hoping that Donald Trump does a bad job is like hoping for a plane that we're all on to crash. But if the worse he does, and obviously like I don't want him to be bad for the country, but like the worse job that he does himself as a president, the better chance that there'll be that Democrats will be able to take over the Senate, House, and the White House eventually in 4 years. And going back to the protest, I do think that the whole like not my president thing, it's powerful. Like I said, it's not going to change anything, and he kind of is our president. Like we have to deal with it, but I do think it's important, like I said, to show that people are willing to protest the things that Trump will do in the future. And with the Electoral College, I agree. I certainly think it's outdated, and the main argument for it is that it encourages candidates to focus on all states, especially the smaller ones. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, that doesn't really happen, because now candidates really only campaign and focus heavily in like 7 or 8 swing states. So California, the biggest state in the or most populated state in the country, if it was its own country, it would have the seventh biggest economy out of any country in the world. It's massive, huge population. It's basically irrelevant in the election because everyone knows it's going to be blue. Everyone knows Texas is going to be red, and everyone knows New York is going to be blue. So the 3 most populated states, in essence, the candidates don't even have to go there. So I think the Electoral College actually moves focus off of many states. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like California and Texas do matter a lot in the election, although people can and they always will predict which side they'll lean to. I think the amount of electoral votes they have, like California with 55 and Texas with 38, I think that's a really big significant in the electing who the president is. But I get your point saying that people will always know which side they'll go to. But I feel like that's not the electoral government's or the Electoral College's fault for doing that, but the people that live in the state. Because it's the people living in the state who elect blue or red. And it's the result of candidates campaigning over in those states over the years and who they decide for. So I feel like California and Texas and larger states like New York and Illinois, they do matter in the election, but they just haven't been seeming to matter in recent years. But I think that could change in the long term, because if we look at Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Michigan, people thought those were going to go blue. They were kind of swing states, but most people thought, the media thought they were going to go blue. But they ended up going red, sadly. But that's the result, because Hillary Clinton didn't really campaign in any of those states, and Donald Trump did, and that paid off for him largely. And the Electoral College does end up focusing mainly on like Ohio and Florida, but that makes the people in those states feel more representative. And I feel like it also does give more representation to the smaller states such as Utah or Hawaii, as the fact that if it was just solely based on popular vote, no candidate would campaign there at all like they do now, because their votes don't really matter down there because there's not a significant amount of people. No matter how small the state is, it will always get 3 electoral votes, which makes their voice more heard. So I think the Electoral College really does favor the smaller states, but the swing states are a huge problem at the moment.
Yeah, I think that obviously the huge states like California, 55 electoral votes is huge. It's obviously significant to the election, but I think with the Electoral College, people on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, I'm sure, in Texas, California, and New York are discouraged to vote, and they probably don't really see a purpose in it, because one, maybe they're probably not as involved in politics because candidates don't campaign there, and two, like I said, basically everyone knows where those states are going to go, and the candidate that wins gets all the electoral votes from a certain state, and that's why, that's a huge reason why half the country doesn't vote, because in California, like I said, massive population, a lot of people feel like their vote doesn't matter.
I feel like a lot of people don't vote, and that is one of the main reasons, but I also feel like it's a little bit off topic, but people don't vote because it's on a Tuesday on a work day, which personally doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I know why they put it on that day, because farmers had to have a travel day and they couldn't vote on the Sabbath, but that is just so outdated now. We see countries and
most countries have it
like,
a national holiday.
yeah,
That's
national
what we
holiday,
should have.
and that would be a great thing for the United States to implement, because those countries have higher voter turnout. But I want to go back what you said earlier about Donald Trump and how people hoping he does a bad job, which we're all on the same plane here. I kind of agree with you to the extent that people shouldn't hope that he does a bad job. But I see your point saying that if he does a bad job, Democrats will get control of the House. But I feel like we should right now put our political parties aside, and that is one of the main reasons that the country is so divided at the moment, and that we should all hope that he does do a good job. Me personally, I was a huge Hillary Clinton supporter, and I thought she was going to win, undoubtedly. But she lost, and I was really disappointed. But the fact is, no matter how much I hate Trump, I don't want him to run this country in the ground. And maybe some Trump supporters will come up and say, I told you he'd be a good president, and I'll look stupid, but our country will be in a better place because of it.
Yeah, so I want the country to be better under Trump. I don't want the country to fail. However, if Trump succeeding means him succeeding in the horrible things that he's said and done throughout his campaign, then I think that would be awful for our country. And so in that sense, I don't want him to succeed in, for example, banning all Muslims, building a wall.
That's true.
So if he, I'm trying to be optimistic. So he opposes the TPP. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Whether or not Obama's pushing it right now, trying to get it passed. So maybe he'll pass it anyways. He wants to end the corruption in politics, which if he did that, I would love him for however long that lasted before he did something horrible. Because we definitely need to end the corruption, and that's one of the reasons why Hillary lost. Everyone knows that. She's pretty corrupt. She's been in politics for 40 years. Trump obviously hugely corrupt, but he's not a politician, so I guess he's excused for some reason. Obviously, I don't think that, but that's the past that a lot of people gave him. So there are things that he campaigned for that I guess I'm kind of hoping come through, but there's a lot that I don't want them to succeed on, because I think that they would undoubtedly make our country worse.
I see your point there, and that was a good point to end on the election of 2016. So now let's move on to the Dakota Access pipeline. I know that you have a lot to say about that, so if you
Yeah.
want to jump right in.
So I'll just give the summary of basically what's happening. So in North Dakota, on the Native American Sioux tribes' land, a oil pipeline called the Dakota Access pipeline is being built. Not only is it being built over sacred burial grounds for Native Americans, it's also being built right by their main water source, which, by the way, is the Missouri River, which is the main water source for a lot more people than just Native Americans, but it's mostly right by the lake that that specific group mainly gets their water from. And so there are parts of it that are legal and parts of it that are illegal. The government said they requested them, please don't go within, I think it was 15 miles of the Missouri River. They're now within a half a mile, and they're trying to drill under the Missouri River. Right now that's been halted, thankfully. But there are other parts that are not legal. For example, they bought the land from Native Americans, which, by the way, is violating a treaty that the U.S. government made with the Native Americans, that land was theirs. And when you buy a piece of land, you're required to say what you're going to do with it. And even though everyone knows what they're doing with it now, they didn't do that when they bought it, and they still haven't given explicit details as to what they're doing with that land. So that part of it is illegal. The part that they're violating a treaty is also illegal. And what's even worse is there are a lot of protesters there, right? So Native Americans, people from all over going to this reservation to protest the pipeline, and there are police there, basically militant police. I mean, there are literally tanks there, stopping protesters, macing them, shooting rubber bullets at them, stopping peaceful protesters in America. I mean, this is something that you would see in some third world country, and yet, so there's freedom of speech being violated there. There's freedom of press being violated. A lot, the hotels nearby are not allowing a lot of, they're saying that they're booked so that journalists can't come there and cover it. They're not allowing service there so that journalists can't cover it live. So freedom of speech, freedom of press, gone. Freedom of life for the Native Americans that are going to get their water poisoned. I mean, just all around, just awful. And what's the government doing about it? Nothing. Obama went on, he went on a interview the other day and said it looked like he was falling asleep during it. He obviously just doesn't seem to care at all, and he said, I think both sides need to be respectful, even though obviously there's only one side that's doing any harm, and that's the government, and they're injuring and doing horrible things. They literally put protesters in dog cages overnight, and they strip searched them. They made them sleep in cages naked overnight. I mean, just horrible stuff. People getting arrested for peaceful protesting. And the part that really just makes me mad is the police are standing there macing innocent people, peaceful protesting. And yet if they turn around, they'll see a corporation that's actually committing the crime, about to poison thousands of people.
But let me ask you this. Is the inconvenience of this tribe and this small group of people worth conveniencing the entire rest of the nation? As many predict, this oil pipeline will create 8,000 new jobs and will greatly decrease the amount of dependence the U.S. has on foreign oils overseas. So the benefits economically are clear, but socially are really negative. Do you think it is worth discomforting this small group of people in order to benefit the rest of the country?
No, absolutely not. And by the way, it mostly is a small group of people, because this story is virtually getting absolutely no coverage from the media. And the economic benefits, the reliance on foreign oil, it doesn't really matter what oil we're polluting our environment with at this point. The simple fact is that any oil pipeline, in my eyes, is bad, because I think we need to try and get off of fossil fuels as fast as possible. And just the fact that they're drilling under the main source of water, and I forget what the number is, but I think in the 1 year there were thousands of leaks in oil pipelines in a single year. I mean, leaks in oil pipelines are very, very common. So I think there's a great chance that these people will get their water poisoned. And so the new jobs, it'd be great if we would help out Native Americans, give them jobs there, then it equates. So I absolutely don't think that there are any benefits that outweigh the horrible things happening to these people.
Now, you said that you don't think Obama's doing enough in this situation, but I think recently he's planning on rerouting the oil pipeline so it conveniences the Sioux tribe. And all his work over the past 8 years for helping the country go more green, it's been constantly shut down by Republicans and others. Do you think that he's kind of a hypocrite for just allowing this oil pipeline in general to pass?
Yeah, I think so. And he, like I said, I think I said it earlier, he ran in 2008 and 2012 as a progressive, and he hasn't really given the people, his voters, what they wanted. That's, like I said, part of the reason that Hillary ended up losing. And I think it's because he's controlled by his donors. That's like the corruption I was talking about earlier. Everything he says is virtually meaningless when he does whatever his corporatist donors tell him to do. And I think that he's absolutely not doing enough, because they should not have been able to build this pipeline in the first place. Certainly not in the means that they did, which in several ways was illegal, like I mentioned. And yeah, I think it just goes back to, I'm sure he has donors in the fossil fuel industry that negate anything that's happening. And even with the pipeline, what is he doing about the police that are harassing and brutalizing these people for no reason, nothing? And there are some cops that have left. They said, I don't want this, like this isn't what I want to do. And people are like, oh, see, they're good cops. And I'm like, yeah, do you realize what you just said? Now there's one less cop who actually has a heart, who's there. Now all of the cops there are horrible people. So great. And no, I don't know anyone who wants this. I feel like this is a non-partisan issue. A Wyoming county, they were going to send their police there to mace and brutalize protesters, and the county told the sheriff, no, we don't want that. Why would we want? The police are here to protect us. They're not here to go put Native Americans in cages. No one, I don't understand who possibly wants this. And Obama, while on some grounds he can't necessarily completely stop the pipeline, he can absolutely stop what his own militant police force is doing, and he's just not doing anything. It's awful. So congratulations, Obama. He's in the last part of his term. So really his legacy, the last part of his legacy is letting the one minority group lower on the social rung than him, Native Americans, get their head bashed in by cops at the behest of his corporate donors.
And you were talking about how Obama is letting police beat and mace these people. But is it Obama doing this, or is it these states and counties that are issuing these police out? Because I don't know of how much control that Obama has over these police militants right now. I would blame it more on the counties and the states that are issuing out these police. And the protesters technically are breaking the law at some points by crossing into private property. And although it is freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of press, they are still breaking some laws that give the police the right to arrest them.
All right, yeah, technically they are trespassing on now the company Dakota Access is land that they unfairly stole from Native Americans. So let me get this straight. You can ban Muslims from your store because it's your property and you own it. You can refuse marriage to gays because it's your company and you own it. But if you're a Native American, you can't kick off a corporation that's going to poison your water and kill your people. You can't kick them off your property. And I don't know the extent to which Obama does have control, but I think as the president of our nation, he should see this and be able to say, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't let cops brutalize Native Americans for literally no reason. Or I guess they're technically trespassing, as you said. And I don't know how much of it is the power of the individual states or counties, but I mean, there are tanks here. I don't know how many counties have things looking like military tanks at their disposal to send to a protest. And just all around, this issue is just horrible. And there's a case, the Dakota Access company sent one of their employees into the protest with a gun. And then people took pictures of him and were like, oh, look at these violent protesters. And then they found his tag and realized, oh, he's from the company, and he brought a gun to make them look like they were violent. And there have been virtually no, I haven't seen any or heard of any reports of any of the protesters having any weapons. They're literally just standing there, oftentimes in freezing water, to make a statement that, to protect the water, and they're just, cops just unloading mace on them. It's just, I can't believe that this is happening in America. When I see this, my first instinct is that this is some third world country, and then I realize that it's 1,000 miles away in North Dakota, in our country that's supposed to be free and have so many freedoms. It just disgusts me.
But to my extent of knowledge, I don't know if the corporation is actually legally on the Native American land. Now, the Native Americans claim this land, but I don't know if they have any contract obligations to the land that the corporation is on right now.
Well, they have a treaty with the American government, which, as we all know, treaties with the Native Americans mean nothing, even though they obviously should. And the pipeline is going across their burial grounds, so I don't really care what anyone says. To me, that's their land. I mean, that's where their ancestors are buried. That's sacred land to them. And, you know, obviously everyone knows how much land we've taken from Native Americans, and we still continue to see it today.
But that's a good point, saying that it is their burial and sacred land, but many people speculate if it actually is their burial and sacred land, because I don't know if the land that the Dakota Access pipeline is going through is actually part of the treaty whatsoever. So why would they have their sacred lands outside of their borders when they could put it in their own reservations or territories?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where the pipeline is being built or the borders or map of the Native American settlements. But even if that is the case, I think the worst part about it is the fact that they are going so close to the main water source of these people. I mean, what are they supposed to do? I can't think of anything that they can do within their power. Like I said, they're probably the lowest minority on the rung. And so they virtually have no power. Obviously, they can't change anything, and when they try, they are being brutalized. So if this pipeline is built under the Missouri River, like we saw in Flint, Michigan, people they're not going to have water, and they're not going to have anything to do.
Well, I think the situation in Flint, Michigan is a bit different than the situation in Dakota. But I feel as if, is it, like I said before, this pipeline will bring a lot of benefits to the United States. And you said that we shouldn't be building it at all because we should focus on more green energy. But I think in the next 4 years, with the Republican-controlled House, Senate, and presidency, we won't really be working towards green energy. So consider not having any other green options and just having this oil pipeline. Is it worth inconveniencing these Native Americans still?
No, I mean, I value I think we should all value the life and the right to life and liberty of all people, including obviously Native Americans, over any sum of money. And these people have been marginalized for centuries, and we can't continue doing it, and we're letting it happen. Once again, like I said, there's no amount of benefit that I can see, especially to a huge oil corporation. I'm sure they'll be fine without this pipeline, and they just can't poison their water like this. This just goes to show how corporations just completely have all the power, and how the powerless can't do anything, and the government is absolutely not doing enough to stop this. But this pipeline cannot go under the Missouri River. It's already gone far. It's gone way too far already, and it needs to be stopped.
But do you feel as if that treaties that we have made with the Native Americans hundreds of years ago, do you think those may be outdated now?
No, and we violated probably, I would say, most of the treaties that we've made. And so, like we were talking about earlier, some things in our government are outdated, but what will never be outdated is the Native Americans' right to their land, to their lives, to their water. That cannot ever become outdated. And with this pipeline, they're being, all three of those things, their life, water, happiness, everything, their rights, our rights, everyone's rights, they're all being violated, and they can't be violated any further.
That is a good point, and I think that is a good point that we can end on. Thank you for joining me today,
Thank you.
Thomas. I'm your host, Dan Roche, and thank you for joining us.